All right, looks like we have everybody back. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City Commission meeting here in Holly Hill, Florida. Today is the City Commission meeting of January 23rd, 2024. I want to welcome you all to our chambers. And just to get this out of the way, our audio is broken tonight, so we're using these fancy speakers. So we apologize for any inconvenience. If you can't hear someone specifically, I'll allow you to kind of get my attention so I can make sure one of the commissioners talks into the microphone. But for now, we're going to try to make this work. And hopefully by the next meeting, we'll get it all fixed back up. So with that, I'm going to ask our city clerk, Mrs. Manning, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Henning.
Here.
Commissioner Curry.
Here.
Commissioner Danio.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Mayor Villa.
Here. And I'll ask you all to please stand for the invocation and continue standing afterwards for the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you pray with me? Dear gracious God, we come to you today with our hearts full of praise. Dear God, we ask you to guide this city. I ask you to guide this commission in every decision that we make. Please help our citizens and our business owners to thrive. Dear Lord, bless all of our first responders who day in and day out risk their lives so that we can live in a free world. Dear God, bless our president. Bless our military. And dear God, we thank you for blessing our great city. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, thank you everybody. We are now going to go to the public comments section of our meeting. This is the opportunity for any citizen in the audience that would like to speak to the commission about anything not on our agenda tonight. And if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Yes, sir. Mr. Legary, come on up. State your name and address for the record and try to speak right into that microphone because our recorder tonight is right here.
Jim Legary, 342 Burley. I suspect that there's probably somebody monitoring this, but I know that the discussion about the chamber building is all over Facebook, and I think there are several. I heard just a little bit, but it sounds like a lot of rumors that might be cleared up. I also wanted to suggest that perhaps we should get the economic development people to look at the building at Fifth and Ridgeway and turn it into something useful rather than whatever it is that he's touting today.
Thank you, Mr. Legary. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission about anything not on our agenda tonight? Seeing none, I will close our public comments and we'll move to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from the January 9th, 2024 regular City Commission meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from Commissioner Curry and a second from Commissioner Danio. Would anyone in the audience like to comment on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll close public participation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Now on our consent agenda tonight, we only have one item. Would any commissioner like to remove it for discussion? Seeing none, would anybody in the audience like to speak about anything on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will close public participation. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a motion for approval of the consent agenda from Commissioner Danio and a second from Commissioner Curry. No discussion is required. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Now we're moving to our regular agenda, which we have one resolution tonight. That's Resolution 2024-R-7. Mr. Simpson.
Resolution number 2024-R-7 by title only for first and only reading. Resolution of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, approving the piggyback of the City of Daytona Beach contract number 19632, awarding an agreement with Raphtilis Financial Consultants, Inc., to provide a utility rate study for the city of Holly Hill at a cost of $45,600, and authorizing the city manager to execute same, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Mr. Forte, do you want to comment on this, or do you want to bring the representative straight up?
No, just real quick, Mayor, we're at the end of our 5-year period. where
Brian.
We were doing a 5.5% rate increase to our utility rates. Thank you.
I'm going to take that one. I'm going to leave that.
We're at this point where we're at the end of the 5-year period where we were doing the 5.5% rate increase to the utilities. And we figured this is the time where if we're going to have to evaluate what those utility rates are versus what our capital expenses and our operating expenses are, now's the time where we need to engage with a company to go ahead and come in and evaluate that. Doing something this early on gives us an opportunity to work through the process, look at the numbers, decipher through them, and make some final decisions that if there is going to be any type of a rate change, we can implement that in October of 2024. So I know that Joseph, he's here, he worked on working with Reptilis. Reptilis has a couple of members on their organization that were part of the last firm that did this study for us. So I believe this was on the agenda last meeting, but due to the weather, folks weren't able to get here in time. So I'll get him turned over.
Thank you, Mr. Forte. And what is your name for the record?
Henry Thomas, and I'm Vice President with Reptiles Financial Consulting.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. The floor is yours.
Okay. So, City Manager and Joseph asked me to come tonight to discuss this potential agreement with you to conduct a rate study and really what that entails. As the City Manager indicated, we like to look at our rates on a prospective basis over a reasonable period of time to make sure that we can anticipate your expenditure needs and whether the rates will be sufficient. So, we're going to work closely with your engineers. We're going to look at your capital needs. That's going to be a primary driver. We know you've got older parts of the system with 2-inch line that needs replacing. We know you've got some good grants you're drilling in on. Hopefully that'll help with your plant investment. And we'll take all that into account along with your operating budget and come up with what would first be an overall plan. Based on that overall plan, we can discuss that with you at that time and get your input into the plan. Obviously with capital planning, there's sometimes flexibility if you've been staying on top of things. If you let it get too far behind, that certainly makes it harder to have flexibility. But you all should have enough flexibility that we can put into place a rate that the community can live with and yet allow you to advance in terms of your reinvestment in the system and making sure that public health and safety is always at the forefront. So the rate study itself will take 90 to 120 days. That will depend a lot on how quickly we can assemble the data. We'll start looking at where you are today, and then based on your engineering plans and your budgets, we'll make projections of where we think we're headed over the next 5 years, and then give you those indications. We can also address rate structure issues and those things. So just as also to ask me to give you a little background on myself and the firm, I've been blessed to be able to do this now for 45 years. So I've been doing this since I graduated from college and worked with governments and utility rates that entire time. As a result of that, at some point we had a firm here that was a fairly large firm in Florida that was acquired by Reptilis in 2019. But that firm, between that firm and Reptilis, we bring probably the strongest utility consulting group in the nation to you. And we're capable of working with both large and small cities. So I think that's one of the things that makes us unique. And as City Manager pointed out, Mike Burton, who did your last rate study, is now a Reptilis employee. Now he's practicing in a different area these days, but he would be available to us if we need him for that history and that continuity. But and also just to give you an idea of where we practice in your area. Just in this area alone, I brought a little short list. So we work with Volusia County, Ormond Beach, New Smyrna Utilities Commission, City of Edgewater, Palm Coast, DeLand, Orange City, Daytona Beach, City of Ponce Inlet, Port Orange, Palatka, and then if you go to the south a little bit out of the county, we work with Titusville and Brevard County. And many of these relationships we've had for, I've worked with the City of Titusville for 25 years, for example. So a lot of our relationships are long-term, and we'll do our best to make that work for you here in Holly Hill.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Thomas. Are there any questions from this commission for Mr. Thomas? We just want to thank you for being here tonight, but I see no questions for you. So
Thank you.
thank you very much.
We'll get moving on the study and talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. We got to vote on it here in 1 minute. So first, we're going to open this up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the commission on this item tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public participation. I'll open the floor for a motion.
Motion? Second.
We have a motion to approve. Is that correct, Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Johnson and a second from Vice Mayor Penny. Is there any discussion needed? Just want to say thank you again, and we look forward to seeing these results. 5 years ago, as you know, we went into this rate study. It gave us a lot of information, and I hope to see that we've made a lot of progress in our water department specifically, so that way we can continue on. So thank you for your work that you're going to do. We look forward to those results and talking about that. With that, are there any further discussions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we're going to move tonight to our public hearings. We only have 2 public hearings tonight. We have, in the first one, we have 2 different ordinances. So I will allow the city attorney to read those in the record.
Okay, as we normally do in this situation, I'll go ahead and read both ordinances. You'll discuss them together, but vote on them separately. First, ordinance number 3069 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, amending the comprehensive plan by amending the future land use map designation of certain property identified in attachment A by virtue of a small-scale future land use map amendment, changing the future land use map designation from low-density residential to commercial, and further adding text to restrict commercial development on such parcels to personal storage uses, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. And ordinance number 3070 by title only for first reading. An ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, approving the second major amendment to the Plaza Grand LLC Industrial Plan Unit Development, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Mr. Walker, the floor is yours.
Yes, Mayor, Commission. This item is with regard to the property at 975 Gulf Avenue. They're requesting a small-scale future land use map amendment and an amendment to their plan development, an IPUD major amendment. So the property at 975 Gulf Avenue was annexed into the city of Holly Hill. When it was annexed into the city, it was an existing non-conforming automobile dismantling and salvage yard. On February 11th of 2003, the City Commission approved an ordinance that rezoned the property from R2 to IPUD, and the use of a salvage yard and automobile dismantling plant was allowed to continue at that time. In July of 2006, there was a major amendment to the PD. This was the first major amendment, and in that particular amendment, the use of an automobile salvage yard and dismantling plant went away, and instead it became, the permitted use became an air-conditioned, single-phase self-storage facility that would include a manager's residence. So that is now the approved use on the property at 975 Gulf, a storage facility with air conditioning, single-phase, and a manager's residence. Well, in February of 2021, the current property owner submitted a site plan application to do 10 buildings, together totaling 61,800 square feet. It consists of 258 storage units. And the property has remained undeveloped. The approved site plan right now shows just the buildings are over 100 feet from the road. There's one road in, one road out, and none of the doors actually face the road. So that's kind of what you would see if you were to look at the approved site plan. But in July of 2023, the applicant submitted an application to request some changes to the IPUD. And the requested changes are attached and labeled as applicant's request, but in summary, they're as follows. To allow non-air conditioned units, to permit that the development occur in more than one phase, in 2 phases. They would like to develop the front part and use the cash flow from the developed storage units in the front to be able to fund the units in the back, and eliminate the requirement for a manager's residence. They'd also like to change the name of the current IPUD and change it to Riviera Oaks Self-Storage IPUD. Along with this request to change or amend the PD, they're requesting that the land use be changed from low-density residential to commercial, and this was done with a suggestion from staff, in order to bring the project into conformity with the city's comprehensive plan. Now, typically, the future land use amendment is done when the property is annexed into the city, and staff was not clear why this wasn't done back in 2002, but we're taking the opportunity now during this request for a major amendment to the PD to correct that. In order to limit the type of commercial development, because at this time, the land use is low-density residential. So in order to do the storage units, it should be a commercial future land use designation. But if you have a commercial future land use designation, then the next thing is, okay, well, if you change that, what does that open the property up to? What can they do? Can they do bars, restaurants? Can they come back and rezone for that type of thing? So the answer is yes, and that's why we are requesting, staff is requesting to limit the type of commercial development specifically to what has been approved for the IPUD, and that is storage. Via a text amendment requesting to apply to the parcel known as 975 Gulf Avenue, and that would be in order to limit the commercial use to only personal storage and no other commercial uses. So, in other words, if they wanted to come back and say, well, we now have commercial land use, we're going to scratch the idea of storage and we're going to come back and do a restaurant and bar, they would have to come back to you to change the land use because of this text amendment. So they're limited to personal storage. With regard to the surrounding zonings and land uses, there is a table in your agenda packet called Zoning and Land Use Table, and that shows a picture of what's going on around the property in terms of zoning and land use. And because we are requesting a future land use change, there is a project analysis that goes along with that. As you know, we look at what are the impacts to water, sewer, stormwater, solid waste, all of the infrastructure type items, traffic. What would be the effect of those if the property in its current future land use were built out to its maximum potential versus what would those impacts be with the requested future land use built out to its maximum potential. So what could they do under the maximum potential of residential, low density residential, and what could they do under the maximum build out under commercial? So the first thing that we looked at was traffic. We did not do a specific traffic analysis for this specific situation. We extrapolated using another project that was similar. So we, in a previous project, took LTG's engineering and planning. We took their traffic study for a project involving personal storage units for property bordered by Old Kings Road and 13th Street near Nova Road. You may recall that not too long ago, before the commission, there was a project proposed on Nova Road to do a 3-story storage facility not far from the Aloha Marine, and then in an area in back of that, there was a residential area, and that area is going to be used for boat and RV storage. So in that study, it was shown that 56 residential units would generate more daily traffic than 700 personal storage units. So 221 daily trips for 56 residential units versus 28 daily trips for 700 personal storage units. And one can see why residential units would generate less traffic than personal storage facility. So extrapolating from that study, the current land use of low-density residential would permit up to 30 residential units on property in question at 975 Gulf Avenue. And those units would generate approximately 118 daily trips. The proposed land use of commercial, if we limited it to 500 personal storage units, would generate approximately 92 daily trips. So the traffic generated under the commercial use of personal storage units in this situation is less than that generated by a single-family development. And the study provided by LTG is in your land use, your agenda packet as well. And the same is true with water and wastewater. We use the Florida Administrative Code Table 1 to look at those effects. And under the current future land use of low-density residential allows up to 30 homes on these 5 acres, and the daily potable flows are 300 gallons per home, or 9,000 gallons per day, and this would also apply to daily estimated sewage flows of 9,000 gallons per day. Under the storage units, the potable water and sewer demand is estimated to be 450 gallons per day. So the proposed storage facility would use 17,100 fewer gallons per day related to water and sewer than would a residential community. Solid waste also would be, much less would be generated with a storage facility. And when it comes to storing water management, they would meet the requirements of the code as well as other agencies. They are also consistent with the comprehensive plan. In your staff report, I've given some specific examples of areas where they are compliant. And they also are consistent with the urban sprawl rule that is required by Florida statutes, section 163-3177. And so based on this, staff does recommend that the City Commission adopt an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan by amending the future land use map designation of the parcel totaling approximately 5 acres and listed and legally described in Exhibit A by virtue of a small-scale future land use map amendment, changing the future land use map designation from low-density residential to commercial, and to further limit permitted commercial activity on such parcels to 500 mini warehouse storage units via a comprehensive plan text amendment, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. And then a separate ordinance to approve a major amendment to the IPUD known as the Plaza Grande LLC IPUD for approximately 5 acres located on the south side of Gulf Avenue, approximately 1,100 feet east of Nova Road South, and more specifically known as 975 Gulf Avenue. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions? Yes, Vice Mayor.
I'm trying to look at this on my phone, Brian, so forgive me. Can you point out the difference between, I think you said the original plan was for 61,800 square feet and 250 plus units?
The approved plan now is actually 10 buildings, and I believe, Val, can you pull up, there's actually, no, it wouldn't be the development agreement. There should be,
I think it's page 119 is what I'm looking at on my phone.
It might be G. No, G's the new one.
yes, that one.
That's the new one.
So that is what currently is approved. It's 10 buildings totaling 61,800 square feet, and there are 258 storage units that are provided.
That's the new one. That's the new one. That's the one that's not approved yet.
There's actually a small gap.
Let's see. I'm trying to find it
The
too.
one on the bottom, there's a split. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Are you looking for what was there?
I'm looking at the difference between what's approved and what's requested.
And I'll just say to that, it is different because of times have changed in the last 20 years. Like one of the major changes is the office that
The
really,
residence, right?
Right, the
Right.
residence
And I get
where
that.
a manager doesn't live. I'm trying to find the exhibit here. Do you know what exhibit it is Mr. Walker? I'm going through them.
Actually, if you go back, Val, can you go back to the one that we were just looking at? So it's in there as preliminary development plan. So you have the exhibit A, B, C, D, E, and then the development agreement, and then the development plan, preliminary development.
I'm trying to see, is that the approved plan or is that the
No.
requested plan?
That's requested.
This is the requested.
Do we know what the approved plan is right now? I didn't see it in my,
I'm trying to find
The
it.
approved plan is the site plan, and I don't have the actual site plan because this is a zoning issue
right?
as an IPUD. So we're just looking at the conceptual.
So I guess my question is, I heard 258 approved units going to 500 units. Is it the same square footage? You know, we basically cut each unit in half, or is it a whole different concept?
No, the 500, again, is based on change of land use. We look at what is the maximum development potential under the commercial land use, which would be 1.95, it would be an FAR of 1.95. So right now, they're at 258, but if, in the comparison of the two
How many
land
is
uses,
in that?
that's 258.
And I did find it, the original layout, if that's what you're looking for,
Yeah.
John, is in, Val, it's in the current PD agreement, which is attachment I, and then it's all the way almost to the bottom. But it's a crude image from 20 years ago, so it's tough to tell.
Right, so you have what is approved now in terms of the old PD.
No, that's a different item. That's either the traffic analysis or,
That's the PD, so you gotta keep going.
yeah,
There you go.
a little bit.
Nope,
Go down
that's just-
further, go down further. It's coming up. There it is.
Right.
That's
So
what's
as
approved.
part of the PD from almost 20 years ago, they provided a preliminary development plan, which is a concept.
Right.
So they came in and they actually submitted a site plan which is in agreement with this particular plan.
Okay.
Now they're amending it, so what we did is we took the preliminary a revised preliminary development plan, and it's 258 units, Where the 500 comes in is conceptual in terms of if they were to build out the maximum, if they built out as many units as they possibly could under the commercial future land use, how many could they get? And that's the number we're saying, if they did that, what would the traffic impacts be? What would the water be? What would the sewer be? And we're showing that the effects to the infrastructure would be less, even if there were 500 units, than they would be if we built out residentially at its highest impact.
I don't think I'm asking my question right. I'm trying to understand the difference between that plan, is there more square footage on that plan or the proposed plan? And are there more units on that plan than the proposed plan?
No, this particular plan, this didn't come with a specific number of units. There's no detail on this other than layout.
I thought in your report you said there was 61,800 square feet with 258 units approved.
That's what's approved with the site plan. So what they did is, under the current PD, the current approved one, with this, they came in and they approved, they submitted an engineered plan
Right,
with that layout.
right, I get it. So what's the difference between that layout and the proposed PUD? I understand if we apply commercial, it could be 500, but we're not applying commercial because it's a PUD.
Right.
So we're restricting it. So my question is, what are the number of units that are requested under the amendment?
The number of units that they are requesting now is up to 500, but they are actually putting in 258. So they have a site plan based on the current IPUD that is 258 units. So 258 units. That, to answer your question, they're requesting that 258 units be approved.
But they can build as many as 500.
They theoretically, they would have to come back. They would come back.
Oh, okay.
But looking at the effects, looking at, again, because in doing a land use amendment, we take the current land use and we take the proposed land use and we say, under these two land uses, if you did the maximum development under each of the land uses, what would be the differences in infrastructure? And so the 500 is just, it's a number based on a proposed, if they were to come and could build out to its maximum potential, the commercial portion, that's the effects that they would be able to, that's how many they would be able to build. But that's not what they're requesting. They're requesting 258 units.
And just a quick point, the applicant is here, and I want to let you know, I'm going to let you come up and speak. We always take staff first to ask any questions, so just keep track of some of these, and you may be able to provide some more when you come up as well.
So,
Did that answer your question, Vice Mayor?
Brian,
Not all the way?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Brian, I think what's throwing a kind of a loop is that you're talking about 500, but they're only requesting 258. It's like, why are we even talking 500 if we're only going 258? You're kind of
Right.
muddying up the waters, I think, is what's
So we're
happening.
talking about okay, so there are two different things. When you have, let me give you an example. Let's say I have a subdivision that's coming to you, and the land use currently is low-density residential. And under the low-density residential, they can build, let's say, 10 units. And they're coming to you because they want to do 15 units. They want to get approval for 15 units. Well, they can't get 15 units under the low-density residential because it doesn't allow that many dwelling units per acre. So they come to you and they say, we want to change the future land use to medium-density residential. Well, under medium-density residential, you're allowed to get 20 dwelling units an acre, okay? And under 20 dwelling units an acre, let's say they could get 40 units on that property if they were to build it out to the maximum potential under the medium density residential. So we look at the effects. We say under the low density residential, 10 units, what would be the effects on infrastructure, water and utilities?
At the maximum.
At the maximum. Under the medium density, at 40 units, what would be the effects? And what we do is we make sure that the city has the capacity to handle that increased volume. Because once you change the land use, if you change it to medium density residential, and they can do 40 units, okay, even though they're only asking to do 15, you could have somebody in the future come down the line and say, hey, I have medium density residential future land use, I want to do 25 acres, 25 units. And you would be hard pressed not to allow them to do that, because now you've changed the future land use. The policy that you've set is you can do 40 units based on the future land use. And so you can do, you'd be hard pressed not to allow them to 25.
Right, but we're not,
But
we're
these
not
folks are only
applying,
asking for,
we're not applying straight zoning. This is a PUD, so it's a
Right.
negotiation. So the zoning is there, and we're gonna do a PUD. My question is, as I understand you telling me, the
Right.
request is for 258 units.
Correct.
That's what that's, how many were in that one? In the approved one? How many are in the approved one? I can't find it anywhere.
well, because the land use right now is low density residential.
No,
So
but-
that's not allowed, period.
There's a PUD on it. I'm not talking about the land use. I'm talking about the PUD agreement.
Right,
There's a PUD agreement that was approved years ago.
right.
How many units and how many square footage were approved under the old PUD that they're requesting to amend?
It didn't, the original one didn't say. The original one, the original PD, first of all, was applied, I don't want to say illegally, but it was applied on a piece of property where a PD is not allowed. And that's because your density and your intensity, how many units and all of that is generated from your land use. Well, the land use on this property right now is residential. So that's why you can't find it, because you have a residential land use which does not even allow them to do what they're looking to do.
I get that, but on that drawing somewhere, someone can blow it up big enough to tell me how many square feet and how many units are on that plan right there. I don't have that capability.
Well, what it shows is how many buildings are on there, but it does not tell you how many units. I wasn't able to get that clear enough to see how many units. So you're right. If I could get a clear picture from that time, maybe I could see the units.
I guess my question
I
is,
can't see that.
are we adding square footage to the request or subtracting square footage from the request? And we don't know that answer.
You're establishing square footage based on the land use, based on the correct land use. Because keep in mind, Commissioner, right now you have a low density, you have a residential zoning here. So it's hard to say, well, in a residential zoning, we're going to allow this much commercial development. And that was never established, because when this got done, the land use was never even addressed. So that's why there's a big hole here.
No, I understand we're trying to correct the hole, but I guess I'm thick, but.
No, it's
that-
confusing.
that- I don't care about the land use, I care about that plan right there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 8 or 9 buildings on that plan that I can barely see, and there's numbers there, but I can't make them out.
Right.
And so there's a PUD, and every PUD I've seen is very specific, saying it's gonna be this many square footage, this many units, it's gonna be painted this color, there's gonna be 17 trees per acre, and all this, that, and the other stuff. That's the beauty of the PUD.
Right.
But our PUD is not that specific.
It's not, no. It doesn't have square footage. It doesn't have number of units on there. This was back May 2006.
It was back in 2006, yeah, that the major amendment was done. Before that, it
Right.
was just It was just basically a picture because it was,
I know what you're asking, and it's a valid question.
Right.
You know,
I'll move on, I'll shut up.
it's a valid question. Is, you know, are we increasing the use that was allowed before? I don't think you're questioning the project because
No, I'm not
you
questioning,
know,
I just wanna know, is it bigger or smaller, more or less?
well, this is what I would say. The land area has not changed, the number of buildings has not changed. They have the same number of buildings now. In fact, they have less buildings now than what was proposed in the original IPUD. The original IPUD did not address number of units, it didn't address
Okay.
square footage, it didn't go into any of that. And along with that, we weren't able to even kind of guess because the land use wasn't there. If I had the land use, if the land use back in 2003 had been established, I could have used that to kind of make some intelligent guesses as to what the IPUD in 2006 approved. But right now, if you look at this completely from a technical or even legal point of view, if you will, what is proposed here is a commercial use on a residential land use, and that's not allowed. And so this particular, the IPUD done back in 2006, in July of 2006, is really devoid of any detail that would tell you size, square footage, and that's the, so your question is absolutely valid. And when you talk about what is you normally in PDs, you're absolutely correct. And what you've picked up on is an anomaly here, and you're looking for something that should be there, but it's not.
Okay, I just thought I missed it. Thank you.
No, you didn't miss anything.
Vice Mayor, I zoomed in for you. I'm calculating it. It's really hard to make out these numbers, but you know, just from looking at it, it looks like there was more square footage in the previous approved, but I'm trying to confirm
Okay,
that for you.
That's fine.
Yes, ma'am.
You keep saying the 258 units that's being requested, but it could go up to 500, but we can actually limit it today to the 258.
Correct.
Because it doesn't appear to me, now, that's not my forte, that's why we have you. And no joke.
Forte.
So it doesn't really look like it would hold up to 500 units.
Multi-story.
Right. 'Cause, okay, so think of it this way. Don't think of the 500 units as anything that they're requesting, as anything that's going to get built or that's being proposed. Think of that as being a number that is upon which you're basing water usage, sewer, infrastructure demands,
Okay.
traffic demands, and so what you're really looking to see are the effects on infrastructure more or less than what they would be under the current land use.
So the number of 500 you're giving me to come up with your figures
Right.
is nothing more than what is actually allowed on the property, but not something that has been mentioned, talked about, anything of that nature.
It would be allowed based on the land
Okay.
land use, but you're restricting it with the PD.
Okay, all right,
So if
thank you.
somebody came in and said, now we want to do 450, they would have to amend the PD
Okay,
and come back to you.
okay, thank you.
Brian, how many acres is this piece of property?
5.
Okay, under the current PD, you can have 65,340 square feet.
Say it one more time.
65,340 square feet of building. It references a floor area ratio of 0.3 or 13.68 square feet per acre of land. That's what the current PP's.
Okay.
So you got 65,340. What's being
Divided
proposed?
by 258.
What's proposed is 61.8.
Okay, so
Right.
it's
And-
smaller, a little bit less square footage
Right.
than what's already approved.
And I just quickly roughly did it, and it comes out to about 61, so.
Thank you.
Can I ask, Brian,
Yes.
the only thing, there's something about doing away with air conditioning units. How's that, I mean.
And Commissioner, that might be more of a question for the applicant when it
Okay,
comes up.
sure. All right.
Unless you have an answer to that, Brian, that you'd like to opine.
No, I'm gonna let the applicant answer that.
Okay.
And, so, you know, how many units again you get in that square footage? That's something that they would have to propose, and right now they're proposing 258.
All right. Are there any further questions for Mr. Walker? Just before you step down, just want to clarify, on Gulf Avenue, there is a traffic light to Nova. That's correct?
Yes, there is.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's also correct that this was a former salvage yard, correct?
This was, yes, and that's been part of the delay in getting it developed. They're finding big car chassis and axles and
Right.
all kinds of things.
And Mr. Walker, in your experience, right now, this is, the future land use is low-density residential. And your experience, developers don't like to develop on old salvage yards, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So in 2006, Mr. Penny, you served on the commission, and so did my dad. And I spoke with him on this item, and the thought process is the highest and best use for this property, because it was a salvage yard, is self-storage. So I just wanted to clarify all that. Thank you very much. For so you can take a seat. For ex parte communication, I have spoke to Mr. Brandon, who I'm going to bring up here in 1 second. You can come to the mic. I have spoke to him about this project and asked several different questions about what he was proposing, and also with staff. Is there any further ex parte communication? All right, seeing none, this is the applicant. I'll just ask you to introduce yourself for the record, and if there's anything you would like to add, and then I'll ask for questions.
I'm Brandon Atkins with 975 Gulf Avenue. My wife would tell you it's really hard for me to sit and be quiet, especially when I got something to say, so I was itching in my seat down there
You did a good job.
throw some information out, and I was trying real hard. So, super exciting, and I think I can answer some of the questions, because there's some things that aren't included in your packet, things that we're doing that are a little bit different than what the normal self-storage facility does. So, number one, just want to address, kind of comment on what Mayor Villa said, was that, you know, one of the best spots, or one of the best things for a site like this, you know, we've started to excavate part of it and dig our retention pond around it. We have found a lot of interesting things in the ground there. So, you know, from a standpoint of land use, storage is a fantastic use for something like this, where it's, you know, we're low impact. We kind of encapsulate anything that's in there. So we limit a lot of that water percolation that runs through into the water reservoirs and our water sources. So great use for this, and you know, part of our plan is to pour all of the concrete slabs and do all the asphalt and curb and gutter and all the site work to begin with. So kind of seals off everything and makes us not an issue kind of going forward. In regards to, so great use for the land in this case, very low impact on the community and the neighborhood. In the planning meeting that we had the neighbors from both sides came over and both voiced their support. This property's been, you know, there's not a lot of people that have been super interested in developing it, so it's been kind of an eyesore for the community back in there. We've had some homeless issues, we've had some trespassing going on back in there, and the design that we've come up with, we started off with as a technology company, so we put a lot of technology that will go into this storage facility, and I'll touch on that here in just a second. As far as like the number of units that we've got, like I said, now we're limited to 0.3% of the entire property that we can put land or put buildings on. So that number will never change. What it doesn't show on here is it shows the buildings, and it just shows a divider wall in there. So it looks like those buildings are 40 feet wide, And it looks like it's one unit all the way through, so we're coming up with a kind of a random number of 500 is that there's a door on either side of those, and there will be a partition wall down the middle of that, or in there at some spot. So it'll allow for us to have a unit mix. So although it shows 278, it'll be, closer to a 500 number. And what he's referencing is, how much traffic impact that's going to have. So if we had 500 units there, how many vehicles are going to have coming in and coming out. That number, we can't go more than 0.3, so I can't put a second level on any of the storage units. I can't build more than what that 0.3% of the property is. So that's all it'll ever be. That 500 is kind of a random arbitrary number, just for when we got to come up with a number for planning for traffic count and how much use. As far as the water use, I believe that Mr. Walker said there would, max use would be 400 gallons of water a day. I think one bathroom and a drinking fountain outside. I'd be surprised if we had 400 gallons in a whole year. So fairly little use on any of that stuff as well. So having talked about that, so great use for the land, and then there's three things that we're asking that get changed in the PUD, namely the manager's residence. So we're big on technology, like I said. We blanket the outside of the facility with cameras. There'll be lights. The lights are downward facing, wall pack camera or lights, so relatively little impact to the community as far as making it a big light bulb that goes off. Everyone that's in the community that has spoken with us is excited that it's not going to be just a black hole back there where people are going and hiding and having issues, especially that close to the dog park. So there will be lighting. We're cognizant of the neighbors. We set everything back. We put a retention pond that wraps all the way around the front to set us back away from the road a little bit. And then cameras will go around the outside and perimeter of everything. It is fenced off. The whole property has a 6-foot tall fence around it. And then there will be a gate in the front. So only people that have an access code for the gate will be able to come in. And so it's not just a free-for-all open storage facility for anyone to come into at any point in time. Having said that, there's been issues with homeless people or people trying to operate a business or live out of a storage facility. We put cameras go into every single storage unit that we have. It's a little bit different and unique that we do. We put security on the renter, so with 500 units there, that's 500 different households that have a storage unit from us. That's every household had 2 cars. That's 10,000 or 1,000 cars that I'd have to know who's coming and going, and an unlimited number of Penske trucks and U-Hauls. So we put the security back on the renter. We give them access to a camera inside their storage unit. They can monitor the security inside there if a door gets opened up and just similar to like a Ring doorbell or a Arlo where there's a number of cameras that blink out there. They get a notification on their smartphone that there's motion inside of their storage unit, and they can then go ahead and do something about it instead of us finding out later on that there was 10 units broken into and we've got to do something about it. So we're heavy on technology. We give them access to those camera systems inside their storage units, and then the outside is blanketed with security, and then a gate for access control and keeping some of the people out of there. We do monitor all that stuff like a hawk. Which kind of brings me to my second point. The way that we design our system, our storage buildings, we've got a layer of poly that goes underneath all the concrete as a vapor barrier. There's a termite barrier that goes underneath there. And then the units are designed to allow passive airflow to go through them. So the point of putting climate control inside of a storage unit is typically to control the amount of moisture that's inside the storage unit, or if you're from Wisconsin, where I'm from, we try to keep things up a little bit so that people's stuff doesn't freeze. Not as much of an issue down here, but the moisture is a bigger deal. With the passive airflow that we get through our storage units, we don't tend to have a whole lot of moisture issues inside of ours. We've got a vapor barrier that goes on the ceiling. We don't have any condensation that happens there. I would argue that having air-conditioned or climate-controlled units invites more the type of person that would like to try to sleep in a storage unit. So when it gets nice and toasty warm in there, that's typically not somewhere where somebody wants to stay during the day. So we avoid a little bit more of that riffraff that tends to try to find somewhere like that in the community that they can stay in or sleep in And so we end up getting a little bit higher clientele by having the security that we provide on the site and then providing that security access to the renter that is there. We do monitor if somebody pulls in and then doesn't check back, or there's nobody that pulls back out in the evening, we track who that is, we follow up on cameras, we make sure that nobody's staying inside of the units. And then, if somebody's coming and going a lot, we do, we respect people's privacy, obviously, but, if somebody's trying to run a business or something out of the storage unit, obviously it's a storage facility for doing storage. So putting your stuff in there and leaving it there. We do have businesses that will store their stuff in there and come get stuff on a daily basis, but, as long as they're not going to operate out of it. So we stay on top of all that. So really the climate control, we're asking that gets removed just because it invites more of homeless trying to live in the storage unit. And we've developed these so that we have passive airflow that can control that humidity level in there. And then lastly, because of all the technology that we do, we don't really need a manager's residence. When that PUD was originally developed, that was a big deal. You always have a manager on site that would help people move in, help people move out, take payments. All of that is done electronically now, so we've got a website. Everyone's got a smartphone in their pocket. So when somebody rents a unit, they get immediate access to the gate, to the camera inside their storage unit, and they're able to pull in. Typically, we have some local partners that we team up with that will help us out with things like mowing the lawn, taking care of trash or debris that tend to accumulate when someone's moving in or moving out and drop something. So we try to keep the facility looking nice and clean. So,
And let me wrap you up here, and I don't mean to cut you off, but we're going to focus in here on the future land use and that PUD, and I understand how into self-storage you are. I understand you are a bit of an expert. This is not your first location. Can you share how many facilities you've been a part of or developed?
now we've got about 15 different facilities
Okay.
across the country.
So well-versed in everything that needs to be done for this storage facility, correct?
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Danio, do you have a question still about?
No, I have to listen to him.
Okay, he addressed it, good.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
I have a
Yes,
quick
ma'am.
question.
Do you want the mic?
Where are some of the storage facilities? Do you have any locally?
We don't have any, this is our first one in the state of Florida.
Okay,
This is the
okay.
first one with all this technology that's going into it.
Okay, thank you.
But, yeah.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, just one last question before I open up to the public for Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker, we have several storage facilities in the pipeline right now, either beginning to be developed. I know we've approved a couple, but we have several in the pipeline right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, and well, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to the commission on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Hi there, I'm Heidi Heller, 460 Bridgewood Avenue. I do apologize, I didn't hear much of what he said. I guess I'm losing my hearing a little bit. But I just would like to confirm that there is going to be a fire hydrant close by, nearby, because we had a fire in our mobile home park, and the firemen could not get to two spigots.
Okay.
So I'd just like to confirm that, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heller. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission? All right, seeing none, I'll close public participation. Mr. Forte, do you know if there is a fire hydrant nearby? Is there?
I don't know, but when they do the site plan review, the fire inspector, the fire marshal will make sure that there is a fire hydrant probably within 500 feet of the furthest part of the project, but I don't know if there's one in the area right now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any further questions? All right, I'm closing public comments, and now I will open the floor for a motion for approval. We're going to take ordinance 2024-0-3069 for first reading, which is the future land use amendment. We have a motion for approval from Commissioner Johnson. Do we have we have a second from Vice Mayor Penny. Is there any discussion needed on the future land use? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Now we will take up ordinance 3070 for first reading, which is the IPUD. Do we have a motion for approval?
Yeah.
We have a motion for approval from Commissioner Johnson and a second from Commissioner Danio. Is there discussion needed?
Yes.
All right, maker of the motion, seconder, no, or hold off? All right, we're gonna go over to Vice Mayor. Yes, sir. You want the mic?
No, well, yeah, I guess. So as I understand it, there's 3 major amendments: allow non-air conditioned units, permit the development in 2 phases, and eliminate the manager's residence. That, as how we see it? So it makes perfect sense to eliminate the manager's residence with the technology, things have evolved. I think it makes sense from the cash flow to permit the development in 2 phases, but I think it's a big mistake not to have air-conditioned units, climate-controlled units. I respectfully disagree with the developer, even though this is his expertise. The state has never done anything in Florida. It's not so much the groundwater that I'm worried about, it's the humidity. And I truly believe you're gonna get a higher end clientele with air-conditioned space rather than non-air-conditioned space. And typically, developers come to us and they paint a picture of roses and we get dead daisies when it's finally done. Because the development is lessened and it's the value and the quality of the development. We tend to be excited to get something and then we're promised everything and we lower our standards when they can't deliver on that promise. So if it is as stated, I will not support it with the non-air conditioned units. I think it's a mistake for the developer, although it's his business, but I think it's a lesser quality product for our community. If it was a first reading, I might be in favor of it, but it's been approved with air-conditioned, climate-controlled buildings, and that's a sticking point for me.
Do you want to bring up the applicant to see if he'd be interested in that? All right, so, and as you said before, PUD is a back and forth, and I don't know if the applicant has considered moving that route. And this is a first reading tonight, correct, Mr. Simpson?
Correct.
Okay, and so we will have a second crack at it too, Mr. Penny, if the rest of us agree here. So we'll go to the maker of the motion. Do you have any discussion on it, Commissioner Johnson?
No, I don't. I just think that area needs to be improved as quick as possible back there. It's been such a problem with flooding. It's been so desolate. It's been a junkyard for a long time, and it's one of my close neighbors, as you well know. So that's the reason I'd approve it, to get it done. It's been ongoing for so long. They work on it, and it grows up in weeds. I go by it every day, just
Yep.
Well, I had a little heartburn with the non-air conditioning until he explained about the homeless thing and all that. I know that there have been, especially around Flomish and what is that, Garden, Pine, a lot of people living in some of these things, so that kind of, but I did have a little bit of heartburn with it. So I'm not, but go ahead.
I don't know if I could address it.
Yeah.
Well, if there's this technology, not only will the renter have access to the security cameras, but I'm assuming that the developer will have access to the security cameras. So if they see people living in there, they're going to kick them out. I don't know how having an air-conditioned space is going to, it might be inviting for people to live there, but if you're paying attention to the building, I don't see how you let it happen. That's just how I feel.
Commissioner Curry, do you have any discussion?
I do not.
Okay. I hear you, John, and I agree. I would prefer the air conditioned. And to your point, Commissioner Danio, I do think that the Vice Mayor is correct that they're able to get those people out of there pretty quickly, if need be, if they're living in it. That's a violation. We can't have that happen. But this is the first reading, and so if you, as a commissioner, would like staff to talk to the applicant about the AC, and I don't know if that's even a possibility for them, then you can talk to Joe personally on that. Yes, sir.
I've made my point that I'm not in favor of non-air conditioning, but this is first reading.
Right.
And I don't want to have an overwhelming argument and defeat this project, because if I vote no and 2 other people vote no, it dies, it's dead. So I don't support it as is. I don't know if the applicant is willing to change it.
Yeah.
If it passes on first reading, there could be discussion with the city staff. But if it comes back the same way as it is right now,
You're a no.
I will definitely vote against it on second reading.
Okay, good to know. So what I would just say, since we're already with a motion in a second, let's handle just this first reading tonight and have staff discuss with the applicant if he can bring it back in that form that you would like to see it. And if so, then it looks like you'll probably get a unanimous vote. So we'll take it from there, and then I'll continue to digest this. And on second reading, I'm going to be in favor of this tonight, so to move this forward. So with that, is there any further discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're moving on to number 2, which is ordinance 2024-0-3071 for first reading. Mr. Simpson.
Ordinance number 2024-0-3071, by title only for first reading. An ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, amending the land development regulations by amending the official zoning map to designate the property described in attachment A from R6 low-density multifamily residential district to RPUD residential plan unit development, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Mr. Walker, the floor is yours.
Yes, Mayor Commission. In January 2021, the City Commission voted at that time to approve that 1088 10th Street be annexed into the City of Holly Hill. This is a property approximately 9.4 acres in size, and it's located on the northeast corner of the intersection of 10th and Vine Streets. And again, it's more specifically known as 1088 10th Street. So at that time, in January 2021, the zoning and land use were changed from UMI, which is a Volusia County zoning, to medium-density residential, a future land use of the City of Holly Hill. And UMI is actually a future land use of Volusia County. And R5, urban single-family residential, Volusia County, to R6, low-density multifamily residential, Holly Hill. So the zoning and land use was changed from Volusia County to Holly Hill. There is a small home on the property of 1,608 square feet that was built back in 1958. And other than that, the property has really remained undeveloped. The applicant recently submitted a plan to develop the property with a 3-story, 70-unit multifamily apartment building. And at the proposed density of 10.41 dwelling units per net acre, the proposed project does meet the requirements of the medium-density residential future land use. They're actually allowed, per the zoning and future land use currently to place up to 12 dwelling units per net acre. They're requesting 10.41. The project proposes 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. But the 1 and 2 bedroom units don't meet the minimum floor size requirements of the R6 zoning district. The minimum apartment size permitted via the R6 zoning district is 900 square feet. So the 1 and 2 bedroom units that are proposed at this time do not meet 900 square feet. The 1 and 2 bedroom units are proposed, what the applicant is asking for, is that 1 bedrooms be a minimum of 600 square feet, that 2 bedrooms be a minimum of 850 square feet, and that the 3 bedrooms be a minimum of 1,000 square feet. And that's really the reason for the requested rezone from R6 to RPUD, and that is to bring the bedroom sizes more into conformity with what they feel the market really requires at this time. There's project information in your agenda packet. I won't go through everything unless you want me to specifically go through an item. There is a zoning and land use table in your packet labeled zoning and food table. The really appropriateness of the rezone has been analyzed per section 82-372 that provides the criteria under which the Board of Planning and Appeals and the City Commission will utilize in reviewing a rezoning request. In Exhibit F, you will find that the applicant has provided their analysis of each criteria and stated how they feel it is met, and staff does not have any objections to their analysis. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations. So based on that, staff will recommend adoption of the proposed ordinance enacting a rezone from R6 low-density multifamily residential to residential planned unit development, RPUD, with the associated development agreement and preliminary plan for approximately 9.4 acres located on the northeast corner of the intersection of 10th and Vine Streets, and more specifically known as 1088 10th Street. And just to let you know, for second reading, there will be an updated preliminary development plan that has tweaked some areas. For example, on the current one, it shows the minimum floor area provided for a one-bedroom is 616 square feet. That's been revised to 600. For a two-bedroom, it has been currently showing 877 square feet. That has been revised to 850. And for a three-bedroom, it shows 1,064 square feet. That has been revised to 1,000. They also provided a little bit more information on the open space, just telling you what comprises the open space. But they are providing the same amount of open space now on the preliminary plan. So it was just going through an update at the time, and that will be attached and provided during second reading. That concludes your presentation.
Thank you, Brian. But I have a question for that. Is that tonight, are we setting the minimums? I'm trying to find it here. Setting the minimums as 600 for the one bedroom, or is it the 616 and then the 877 for the two bedroom?
It's 600, a minimum of 600 for the one bedroom, a minimum of 850 for the two bedroom, and a minimum of 1,000 for the three bedroom.
Okay.
That is what they're asking for.
Okay, thank you very much. And primarily, just to get this straight, as I understand it, it's just that change. The overall, we've gone through this project multiple times now,
The
but
project and what they're looking to do is already approved.
great. Okay,
What they're doing is they're saying, hey, can we reduce the minimum size requirement for the one and two bedrooms?
okay. And I have another question for the applicant when she comes up, but is there any further questions for Mr. Walker? Yes, sir.
It begs the question that maybe we should look at our minimum size requirements to reflect the market now.
Yes.
Tiny homes and such.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
for a later date.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
All right. Seeing no more questions for you, Mr. Walker, thank you. Is there any ex parte communication to disclose? Seeing none, I will invite the applicant to come up. Thank you, and just introduce yourself for the record and anything you would like to add, and then I have a question for you. So.
Absolutely. For the record, Jessica Gao, Top Law Firm, 149 South Ridgewood Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. I'm here with Jason Larson with the development team and Mark Gauss, our engineer, if you get into technical questions that I can't address. I can't say it better than I think your staff did. They did a fantastic job. They're great to work with. We are requesting 70 units. I think the rationale behind the PUD is to create more of a compact building on site, modify that unit size. Over half the site will be pervious, which means some wetland preservation and stormwater that we're seeing on site. So we have a lot of open space, a single building kind of set back away from the road to use that open space for the adjacent residences. But really, we're here for questions.
Thank you. So my question is, and I believe I know the answer to it from speaking with staff, The reasoning for going down is to make these more affordable. Is that correct?
Correct. It's market driven. Also, the 900 square feet, that is actually the minimum unit size for a standard single family in most jurisdictions in Volusia. The multifamily unit size ranges. I think in Daytona, one bedroom's 450, Fort Orange is 500, Portland's a little higher, I think they're at 700. So you see that range, and so I think maybe it is just something that updated over time. But we are trying to bring these into a certain affordability range. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. With that, we'll open this up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the commission on this item tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public participation and I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Curry and a second from Vice Mayor Penny. Any discussion?
I just thank you for trying to bring affordable housing into our community.
Anything else from the commission? Ditto. All right. With that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're going to move to communications, and tonight we do have some things to discuss. And before I go over to our city manager, Vice Mayor, we have talked about in the past tiny homes and looking into that, and I think maybe future-wise and planning, we can talk about that again. I do want to be careful with, and I'm just saying that we can talk about all this later, but just off the top of my head, I do want to be careful with lowering those minimums for all projects. This is a project that I think will benefit the community and the surrounding area, and people need these homes, smaller square foot sometimes if you're a single person. And so I almost like to take these one by one, but when we look at the tiny homes, I think that's different, and I think we could look at maybe zoning for that, but not necessarily across the board, just approve these. I appreciate this coming before us, so that way we could take a look and then judge based on that particular
Yeah,
project.
I think our minimum sizes are quite generous compared to surrounding communities. That's what I just like to do a comparison, see where we are.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Thank you. All right, and with that, we're going to move over to our city manager. We're going to discuss, we have discussed direction of the city annex building.
Yeah, so at the last meeting,
Is this, that microphone? Brian, can you get that? Thank you.
Slipping, Brian. What happened to that assistant?
at your last meeting on the city manager's comments was a discussion with the commission about the future use of what we know as the city annex building, which is where the Chamber of Commerce office used to be. So the Chamber of Commerce disbanded at the end of December and the building was vacant. So I had a request from two groups that had interest in the property and occupying the space. One was from Tacoma and the other was from the Holly Hill Historic Society. Obviously, word is out. We have some folks here from the Historic Society. They, not that it was a secret or anything, it was never a secret. That's why it's been posted on the agenda. But I received several emails this evening from people involved with the Historic Society that are asking for us to maintain interest with this Historic Society. But I put two, I don't want to call them proposals necessarily, but I put two letters of interest in the agenda. I sent them to you so that you can take a look at what each group has been interested in, what they're offering. And I figured it's not necessarily a management decision. I think it's more of a policy decision on what we want to do with the future of that building. I will tell you that I looked at it from an internal perspective based on a few new employees that I think we're going to be hiring here. And I think when I rearranged some office space in City Hall, I don't have a need for use of that annexed area for what I'm hiring. So that leaves it open to the letters of interest that you have in front of you in your agenda package to determine what you think the highest and best use of that property would be and how we want to move forward with it.
Mayor,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
I first ask him to clarify some information?
Do you want the mic?
I probably will talk loud enough. Joe, just because there's so much misinformation out there and it never happens on Facebook, I mean, God, that's the gospel. That's why I don't belong to any groups anymore, because there's so much misinformation on Facebook. and also misinformation in the emails that I have received this afternoon and this evening. So please, please, please clarify Pictona, the relationship to the city, the fact that that facility is not Pictona's. It is the city of Holly Hill. So please just clarify all that.
And there's no intent to kick the Historic
Yes.
Society out of the building. Those are the emails I received.
Yeah, I received those too.
I didn't get a chance to read any of the emails, so I don't know, but I'll clarify anything that comes up that you have read, just let me know. So the old baseball fields was redeveloped under a partnership with Martin's Charities, Volusia County, Racing and Rec, and the city of Holly Hill CRA. And the Pictona facility was built by those groups. It was built and funded and paid for. The ownership of the building, all of the assets are owned by the city of Holly Hill. They're assets of the city. We have a contract with Pictona at Holly Hill and their nonprofit to operate the facility for an extended period of time, of about 50 years, I believe it is. So any monies that are made by the nonprofit are put back into the facility. So for example, if you went over there today, you'll see that they made a vast improvement of the garden areas behind Pictona 2. Huge difference. I couldn't tell you how many people.
It's beautiful.
So they reinvest money back into the projects. The city doesn't make money on it. In fact, it costs the city money because we pay certain aspects of that, like utilities and for a position that's over there. There is no intent of removing the Historic Society from their current location. I hadn't heard that before, but that's not a matter that's up for discussion. Where they are right now is where they will be, unless something happens in the future, but that's nothing that's been discussed.
Thank you for the clarifications.
Yes, and to clarify further, Mr. Forte, where are we tonight? I know that you've brought this before the commission. We have discussed this. I think there was a good idea by our vice mayor about it. But tonight, you get direction from us. Are you going to bring this back to the commission to then make the decision? What are you looking for tonight?
Well, what I'm trying to get from the commission tonight is some direction on where do you want me to go. I either have to enter into discussions with members of the Historic Society or enter into discussions with members of Pictona at Holly Hill to go into more of an agreement. So for example, if Pictona wants to run programs out of that facility, or they want to operate it as a welcome center, is there going to be a share in the cost of membership fees or participation fees, like if they run an aerobics program out of there and they charge for that service? It would basically be an extension of the city, what used to be our recreation department. We no longer have a rec department. So they would operate certain community activities out of that facility, as well as Sika Hall and possibly the clubhouse, depending on the size of the group. And they would provide programs to the community. So I would have to bring back whatever agreement I enter into, I'd have to bring back to you, but I need to know which direction to go.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear so that way the folks in the audience, you will be able to comment on this before it goes any further. Tonight is more like a workshop where we're going to talk about our ideas. I kind of sense, I don't know, but from our previous discussions that we all might have some different ideas. So I know that I've spoke to you, Mr. Forte, in our private one-on-ones about the possibility of doing a hybrid approach, and I haven't spoken or heard from the Historic Society specifically on what their needs are, but from you and in the last meeting, I think Commissioner Penny stated that they were looking to expand as well, and then from the letter that we received. So I think all of us, and I'll just say this right off the bat, we all really appreciate the Holly Hill Historic Society. It brings a lot of our rich history. We need it. We are thankful to all of you. We know how much time and love and energy you pour into it. And that is why we support you with utilities and with the building. And so we're not taking that away, as was stated earlier. We are not going to do that. What I would like to know as we move forward, what exactly is the space that you need? I understand possibly to store things, but also, maybe to have a place to congregate. And there's a nice little place in the back of the chamber that had that. And so in my discussions with Mr. Forte, I would like to see that to be able to happen if there's a compromise of Pictona can use this amount of space and we can also maybe reconfigure. It was the Vice Mayor's idea in the last meeting that we spoke about to configure it to where you have access to the water area, the kitchen, so you don't have to wash dishes in the sink or whatever it is right now. And so I like that, personally, I like that hybrid approach. Pictona is offering to be our welcome center, to be able to handle some of that. I'm not sure how much I'm into that, but I think some of our commissioners may be. So, it's in my opinion that I think we can have the best of both worlds. So that's where I'm at on this, and I know that there's probably a lot of opinions on here. Vice Mayor, you're raising your hand, so I'll let you speak.
I think that I try to look for win-win situations.
Can you get the microphone?
Yeah.
My assistant will bring it.
You're not
Joe's
assistant now,
assistant.
you back on it.
Come on.
Thanks, Brian. So often I try to look for a win-win situation. Two great organizations, and both have different strengths. And so, as I understand it, one of the biggest shortfalls that the Historic Society has had, and I never realized it until I was a speaker at one of their meetings, is when they meet, they don't have access to a kitchen. They have to wash all their dishes and stuff in the bathroom sinks. It's kind of terrible. And they don't have a really great space to do a presentation. And so they need that space, they need the presentation space, they need a kitchen. They need storage space, but I have to say that I don't think storage of artifacts in that building is the highest and best use. So that's the thing that I don't think is so great. So then Pictona says, we want to be your welcome center, we want to run programs through there, and I believe Pictona wants to operate it Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. The Historic Society relies on volunteers, and they're only there a couple days a week. So if we gave the whole building to the Historic Society, we lose out on the Monday through Friday welcome center thing. I truly believe that we can set together a contract so that the Historic Society has access to that gathering room. We'll call it
Kitchen, meeting room.
Kitchen, meeting room area. The first Friday of every month, or 2 Thursdays a month, whatever it needs to be. Those details can be worked out. We may even need to go so far as to cut a hole in the wall of that kitchen area. Well, I don't think, Mr. Forte and I went there, I don't think it's that difficult to have like a Jack and Jill access to that kitchen, so that Pictona could come in the day, Historic Society could come through the back door. It's like having a roommate. You share, whose bologna is that in the refrigerator? Don't eat their bologna. But I think it can be worked out, but I don't think the highest and best use is to store more artifacts. So if they have that much stuff, maybe we have a brand new air-conditioned storage facility coming to town. You could store some of your stuff there. But I truly think we have two great organizations that both have strengths and weaknesses, and I see Pictona being a mostly 9 to 5 thing, and most of the activities that I've seen at the Historic Society are in the evening. So they can share the space, they can get along, and I think you truly could have a win-win situation. So that's how, in a perfect world, that's how I would like to see it.
Commissioner Perry?
I'm gonna ditto all of what you said. I think they're both great organizations for the city. So the main information I received in the letter was that they needed the kitchen and meeting area, and I don't see why that can't be shared. I don't have a problem with Pictona using the front part for a welcome center, helping us with other tasks as far as events, and then both of them having access to the kitchen and that kind of a meeting area back there. That's what we utilize it for usually, not really a meeting area, but we kind of congregate there before the parade. And there's plenty of room in that back kitchen meeting area to hold a meeting, so I would definitely be in favor of that. Thank you, Brian.
Commissioner Daniel?
Well, we've kind of talked about this already, so we kind of touched on what you're saying, so I'm okay with that as well.
A hybrid approach?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like John says, it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, that's a
Commissioner
total
Johnson?
win-win.
I pretty much agree with what you say there, because the city is the landlord pretty much. The city is not gonna make much of a profit off of either one of the tenants when they come in, I believe. So if they can share it, I think that would be the best interest of the city, and I think it will work out for both. If they just need a place for a meeting area and a place to worship things and all, the back end is great. If Picton wants up front to have any kind of a staging area or a gathering place for them, or say what you want to promote Pictona or the city of Holly Hill right there in the front area, I think it'd be great if they could share it. If they can work it out and get it together, do it.
All right. So I do hear consensus on this, and just so you know, too, the Historic Society, you can get with each of us individually and speak with us. You can speak with the city manager as well on your thoughts of what this is. I think we all want to amicably work this out, but what I will add to that is, and this is my opinion, I don't know if it's shared by the commission, but if, Mr. Forte, I'm talking to you, when you discuss this with both parties, if Pictona is in a take it or leave it, all or nothing approach, I am against that, and I will definitely side with not allowing them to move forward, because I want the access for the Holly Hill Historical Society. I don't know if I'll have support with that.
Yeah, I
but-
feel the same way.
Okay.
They should be able to share it.
Yeah, that building is designed
There-
terribly.
It is designed terribly.
So we have consensus there. Mr. Forte, do you have any questions for us?
Nope.
Okay. And as I said, you
Can I
can,
say one thing?
no, you can tell us after, and then we can do this again. He's going to be discussing this. I'm sorry, I just don't allow any comments on things that are not regularly agended. Okay, so moving forward, Mr. Forte, do you have more for us?
Yes.
Oh, is it the Waste Pro?
Oh,
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to jump back into our discussion about the Waste Pro rates here.
almost make the
And
number
what are we
too
looking at
small
here,
for this old
Mr.
lady.
Forte?
All right, so first before I get into what I just handed out, does anybody have any more questions about the work session portion of this? Any direction moving forward, something more you'd like me to look into?
I have comments, but if you want to address this first, that's
All
fine.
right, so this is kind of what I mentioned during the work session. This is the top half of this, and primarily look at the green box on the far right and the green box that's towards the center left. This is our commercial rate. So if you look at the far right, you'll see what the markup has been on our commercial collection rate back in 2017-18 when we first contracted with Waste Pro. And over the years, there have been rate increases that the city has absorbed out of its reserve fund. So then if you look at the markup in the center, and I'll draw your attention down to the last item, and if you look at the commercial toters, we used to have a 28.5% markup on that. Now we have less than a 2% markup. So we're making less than $1 on each commercial toter that's collected. And you've got most of these rates are, from 44% down to 20%, from 28% down to 7%. So we have a very imbalanced collection ratio on our commercial toters. And I'd like to come back with a proposal, with your support, of across the board increase, I shouldn't say across the board, meaning everything would be equal. I mean across the board, that each one of these different commercial rates would be looked at and try to get it closer to what the markup was in 2017 and 18, and not so much down to where they are right now, because these rates are really affecting our reserves and our surplus, and it's getting to the point where we need to start making up some of that difference. So I'd like to come back maybe at the next meeting, or if you'd like to bring it back to a work session, some proposed rates. And this is independent of what we heard at the work session. At the work session, Bill said that they were looking at a $1.88 increase plus CPI. And again, once we talk about that, we can figure out what we're going to do. But I think no matter what happens, I need to address the rates that are charged on the commercial side of things.
Mayor, I'd rather see this at a workshop. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Do you know what the totals are? Meaning, for the toters, the current Waste Pro rate total is $33. What is that in dollars and cents total that we're bringing in?
You mean for the
Citywide
Meaning-
revenue, citywide revenue.
Right, I'm trying to determine how we're making 1%, right? Current markup, 1.93,
yeah,
less than 2%. Where,
I don't have that number. I can get you those numbers. You're asking me what each of these different categories, how much they bring in a year. So in other words,
Yeah.
don't spend a lot of money on something that brings in $1,000.
Right.
correct, that's what I'm trying to get at.
I get you.
Because percentages are great until you see the real
So they see
numbers.
the number.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
Percentage
and,
of
but to that point, if we're only at 1.93, what that tells me is that when we look to build our reserves for storm debris and all of those things, that's primarily going to fall on our residential consumers. So if this is a bigger number, as we increase this on the commercial, I think the commercial should be bearing that cost with our residents as well. In fact, I believe they should have more of the burden of it. So,
So why don't I do this? Why don't I work with Michelle, and we'll try to bring back what the revenue, and hopefully you can do this, what the revenues are either monthly or annually in each of these categories, and then what we would propose would be a rate increase over that.
yep, I would like to see that personally, because
Looks
I think the commercial needs to be lifting their fair share. It shouldn't be on our
It
residents.
looks on the residential cart, we have 29.52% profit. On a commercial cart, we have 1.93%.
Right, and I don't think that's fair,
Yeah,
so
I don't agree with that either.
The rate's higher.
the rate is
on
higher,
commercial,
yeah, but the
is less.
percentage is different. Yes, Ms. Moore,
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to answer a couple of your questions.
thank you.
Although I didn't do the math, we have about 475 of the commercial toters that we are making 1.93%.
475.
And then overall, for the big picture in a year, we are spending $2,376,000 for Waste Pro, and $1,427,000 of that is this top part, the commercial.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you very much.
So the brunt of the cost is commercial.
Right.
So I'll go ahead and try to collect that, and maybe I can schedule it for a work session at the next meeting.
Yep, that's certainly fine. Is that it for, oh, yes.
So Joe, the residential rate that we talked about in the workshop, can the commercial, are those pots of money combined? If the commercial increases, can it save money on the residential side of the equation?
It's a single fund, it's a single enterprise fund, so all the money goes into the bank account, into that account, regardless of where it comes from. So if you kind of look at it from, I'll use a health insurance perspective, can the top portion offset the cost of the bottom portion? Well, it could. It could, it depends it depends where you want to set your reserves and make sure that we reach those reserves and they're stabilized, not just for today and this year, but for the future years. And like we talked before, we have been reducing our reserves knowingly and intentionally, and we've been funding things like the paving program like that. But we're at the point where we can't do that anymore, and we have to start to correct that curve.
Right, I don't know that the rates need to be equal, but they need to be equitable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. That's not, yeah.
Okay, so I have your direction on that. Let me go back to the discussion from the work session. Is there any direction on how you want me to move forward? Do you
Yeah.
want more information? Are you satisfied with the proposal? Do you want to do nothing and go out to bid?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we couldn't have that debate right in front of Waste Pro. But my question to them was, I want to make sure that, you know, when we look at Palm Coast, what happened, and I asked them about it up here. I think it was a politically correct answer that I received about the bidding, and that's just my speculation. When they went out to rebid it after Waste Pro gave them what I've heard to be a decent offer before they turned it down to send out to rebid it, those numbers came in high and above what they expected it to be. I don't want us to be in that position, but as I look at this, you know, and I wanted to say this to Mr. Redmond when he was here, that we negotiated a good contract 10 years ago. That's why we're in this position. And so we're in the driver's seat for the next few years, that if we're going to go ahead and increase it by $2.50, then instead of that money going to them, we can put it to build our reserves in anticipation of what 2027 is going to be when we bid it out in 2026. So my thought process is to keep doing what we're doing, take advantage of the good deal that we have now, and then see what 2027 holds. If you look at what they provided us, we're looking at worst case scenarios. And Bill Redmond himself talked about being so conservative in what he's looking at. Vice Mayor, you brought up CPI, that, yeah, there's a cap at 5, and that's saved us in the last couple years. But before that, we had inflation of 2 to 3%. So in those years, we can save. Now, across the board, they've calculated all 5%, which, by the way, that's what we should do in planning and budgeting. But the reality, I think, can be different. And you know, I think a lot is changing in that whole entire world. I think that the economy is trying to find its level. And so prices are wildly fluctuating. And I think if we have a couple more years in this economy, that they're going to find its level. And so my thought process is let's take that money that we can have now in the next few years, build up our reserves, be ready and expecting what's going to come in 2027, but I don't expect it to be worse than what they've already told us they think it's going to be. So that's kind of where I'm at, but I do appreciate, Mr. Forte, you and your staff going through this with a fine-tooth comb and giving us the option of being able to smooth it out a little more. But once again, we can still smooth it out for our customers over time, but also have that built up in our reserves as well. And I think we need to look too, as we just talked about, into the commercial, taking the brunt of that, taking more upon their shoulders instead of our residents. And so the goal here is to provide the least rate to our customer, which is our residents and our business owners. But primarily I'm looking out for the residents here. That's where I am on it. And I don't know if anyone else has any strong opinions. If you do, yes, sir. And then we'll go to you.
Mayor, alluding to your point, if Palm Coast is paying about $32 to the vendor today, under that 7-year scenario, in year 5, we get $36.83.
Right.
So, you know, I can't project what the future is going to be, but if it's in that ballpark, it's in that $35 to $40 range, and we have enough reserves that are built up over the next 3 years, we might be able to soften that flow for a year or two, and eventually it'll work its way up. But like I said, we don't know what that market's going to be. There's always a risk. There's a risk it'll go up. There's a risk it'll go down.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna stick on my numbers because you know I'm the number guy, but I guess I'm gonna have to sit down with Michelle and have her explain the difference between a 7-year contract with a 5% CPI and a 5-year with a 5% CPI. And if you look at year 14,
Yeah.
the monthly rate under the 7-year plan is $79.23. Under the 5-year plan, it's $74.90. However, if you look at the reserve with the higher cost to the customer is $37,370,359. The lower rate of under $75, the reserve increases to $38 million. So there's $1.5 million additional in our reserve by charging less. So it's either me not getting it, or it's too complex for me to understand, or there's an error in the spreadsheet. So I don't know what it is, but I can't make a decision based on what's
Yeah,
before
I
me.
can't either.
There's a $300,000 difference within
Yeah.
that. So, do you have an answer for that, Michelle? I know we're springing it on you.
Just to make sure that everybody knows, this is not Michelle's spreadsheet.
No, I know. That's,
She might be able to read the
no,
numbers.
but you might be able to explain it to me, not tonight, but at a later time.
And what Scott has pointed out, that if you look at that 7-year one, you've got the rate stabilizer that goes out to year 7. But on the one that's the IA 5-year, that rate stabilization only goes out to year 5. So it has 2 more years of rate increase on it than the previous one. So I can't answer it all either, but you can get clarification.
Right, no, that's,
What I can show you is, if you look at it, John, I was looking at what you brought it over to me. If you look at year 5
yeah,
and go, I'm sorry, the 5-year one? IA. So go to year 5, you see the rate increase ends. The 250
Okay.
drops down to $1, see that?
right,
Now, if you go down to the pink area, the cost goes for 1 more year to year 6 of 250, then
Right.
it drops. See that?
yep,
Yep,
Okay. Now go to page, the 7-year one.
right,
yep.
So
Starts in
you
year
see
8.
where in year 7, the 250 rate increase stops and,
right, because that's an expense. The expense goes away.
No, but the expense goes on, if you go down to the expense side, the pink area, it goes for 2 years beyond.
Right.
And so that's the difference between the 5-year one and the 7-year one, is for some reason the 5-year one has the expense go 1 year past the stoppage of the rate increase, where the 7-year one has the expense go 2 years past the stoppage of the rate increase, and that might be the difference.
Right, I'm just wondering,
So that you would have more expense, that would reduce your profit in the 7-year one, because you have 1 more year of an expense increase of
Right.
250.
right, but these are their numbers. These are their expenses they're projecting for us. So if
Well,
they're-
what I'm just saying, for some reason, I don't know why in the 5-year one, the expense increase to the
Right.
cost to the customer only goes up in 1 year at 250
Right.
past the rate, whereas in the 7-year, it goes up 2 years past the rate.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
where I wish Mr. Redmond was still there, because he recommended the 7, and I'm looking at it
Right.
going, the 5 is a better deal for everybody.
But I think if you did the
Yeah.
7, and if you ended at 250 rate increase in the pink highlight area,
Right,
on year 8 and not year 9,
right,
all of a sudden your overall expenses are less, and you might see more profit.
right, but I don't know if that expense, that's a waste pro expense they put in there?
Well, that's an expense. The revenue is what we bill.
Right.
The expense is
What
what
we
we
pay
charge,
to
what we
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
them.
Right,
So they have more years of rate increase in what we pay Waste Pro. So that's going to be our expense side. When you look at revenue
Right.
expenditures, our expenses are going to be higher under year 7 because there's 1 extra year of expense increase than what's in year 5.
right, so, but they're asking us to lock it in for 5 or 7. I'm saying locking it in for 5 is better, and then,
Well, but my question is that why would you only go 1 year past on a long-term projection like
Right.
this? Why are you only going to increase the expense 1 year past the revenue?
right, that's the
Right.
question we need
2
to ask the people that produce this spreadsheet.
Yeah, because I think if you take in year 7, or the 7-year one, if you take year 9 and make that a line 0,
Right. Might
Right.
be
all of a
different.
sudden the profit's different.
Right.
Exactly.
So-
Now, that's my whole point.
Yeah.
I'll have to get clarification from Bill.
I was trying to figure out where this difference occurred, and that's the one thing
Yeah,
I
it
saw that
is.
was different.
Okay, all right.
Between the 5 and
We'll
the
get
7.
more information. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I have a couple other items that I can talk with everybody individually on, they don't have to go up here, so.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Do you have anything for us, Mr. Simpson?
No, sir.
All right. We'll start this way and go opposite today. So we'll start with Mr. Johnson.
The only thing I have is, I have a TPO meeting tomorrow, so if anyone has anything they want me to discuss, the size of the PGA,
Talking about talk shows.
maybe they could, let me know now so I can bring it up tomorrow. And I do have, one other thing here, I gotta put in my code here to find it also. One other thing I just wanted to bring up, that if possible, if you guys could put on your calendar maybe for, say, join us on February the 12th at 4 p.m. behind Holly Hill City Hall at the Police Department for a presentation to gift all 26 patrol cars. Does Chief Miller know anything about that?
What is that?
What is it?
He knows about that. If it's possible, you can put it on your calendar to do that.
What is it?
It's gonna have something they're gonna put into the police cars to help them out, I think, or something.
Just the sensors act.
Eh?
It's just sensing smells, the smell for sensing.
It's on, it's, February the 12th at 4 p.m. right back here.
Who's that from?
It's gonna be sponsored by the Volusia Sports Center.
Oh.
It's gonna sponsor it.
I didn't know that, I didn't know you were sponsoring that service.
I'm not sponsored, I'm not Volusia.
Volusia, yeah.
You're not sponsored, you're just paying for it.
I apologize.
Well, it's some kind of a battery
Yes.
powered.
I don't know anything about
I don't know. Only thing I know is I got a text to bring it up.
Somebody left the guy out.
Do you know anything about it, Chief?
It wasn't finalized, we were working on some things, but I didn't know anything about
I think Daytona's getting all theirs as well. That's all right. But don't forget, I have a TPO meeting tomorrow, so we're gonna work the thing up.
Commissioner Daniel?
I'm good.
All right. Commissioner Curry?
There you go.
How will I follow that? I appreciate everybody coming out, participating, and I don't really have anything else to say, believe it or not. John, oh, you got one. Hey, you got here.
Oh, God, where'd that come from?
Two things, and let's don't discuss it all tonight because we're not going to solve it. The state of the city, we selected Citizen of the Year, we have Employee of the Year, Business of the Year. Since the Chamber's not here, what do we do? You know, the Riviera, my opinion is the Riviera is very welcoming. Actually, there was little or no cost to the Chamber for those breakfasts. I think it's a great breakfast, it's a great venue, so I don't know when we're gonna do it, but I think we should try to plan something, rather than us doing it here for Heidi. She'll be the only one here. She can come to our breakfast too, but I don't know, just a thought. I don't know if we need to talk to Jill individually about thoughts on that. And then Mr. Forte sent us an email. We talked in the past about commission salaries, and are they in line, out of line?
I couldn't open up.
And I saw that Daytona was doing something
Couldn't open it.
interesting, that they were tying their salaries to a percentage of the county chair. And I'm assuming that the county chair is tied to some kind of CPI or something like that, so that once it's set, no future commission ever has to worry about it again. And I looked at that, and they're proposing 75% of the county chair's salary
It's a 50% increase.
Wow.
for the mayor, and then 75% of that
That's
salary for
another
the
pump
commissioners.
code.
If we were to entertain anything like that, if we did 25%, it's more than we're making now. And 25% for our city is probably, you can do, I don't remember the actual math, but if you did 25% of that salary for the mayor and then 75% of that salary for the commissioners, it's pretty much, I think it's more in line. And I don't think this pay has been addressed in at least 20 years. No one ever wants to increase it. You don't want to increase your own pay. I'm not saying we increase it for ourselves, but just increase it for some future
Well, I
election.
think future,
For the next
because,
commission. So I know Mr. Daniel brought it up a while ago. We talked about it, but then we didn't talk about it. But I thought that was an interesting approach to tie it
yeah.
to something that automatically changes. So food for thought at a later workshop.
Yep.
That's
And,
it.
and just to be clear too, so all county commissioners, the state legislature every year reviews it and approves the stated salaries. And then in our charter for the county, it's in there that the county chair makes 60% of what the state says they should make, which is about $60,000 right now. And then the commissioners, the county council members, make 50%, I believe it is, of what they're said to make. So they're about close to 50,000.
Well, you guys know I'm the math guy, right? So it's easy. If you have a number and put the formula in, then it's not arbitrary anymore. So just, it would be a lot easier in the future.
And to address your State of the City comment, yes, we spoke briefly, Mr. Forte and I, about it yesterday, and my thought was, and I do hear your critique, and it's well taken about Heidi, we love you. You'll probably be the only one here for the State of the City, and you as well. So, but I do think that possibly we could promote that. We could do it maybe like at a 5 o'clock time before a commission meeting, so that way, you know, staff is already here. It's already a regular scheduled meeting. If we promoted it, I was thinking we could use this for a PowerPoint, put up, you know, important facts and figures. I'm open to doing it the way that we've done it. I almost don't want to put it on staff to have to do a whole breakfast and to really coordinate all that. If we only have Heidi show up, then Heidi will get a good presentation. But hopefully we'll get more people here to hear it. We could also film it. I could set up a camera and then, you know, we could post it out there. It will obviously be my last State of the City. So
Let's make it big then.
I'm okay with doing it either way, but you're right about there's so much apathy right now, and that's unfortunate, but doesn't mean we shouldn't try. So we'll put together something. I'll get with Mr. Forte. I'm kind of brainstorming on it right now, but I don't know if anybody would object to having it right here in the chambers and inviting everybody at like a 5 o'clock time, maybe even 5:30, because it doesn't have to be that long. I think my previous ones were maybe 20 minutes long, even though it might have felt like an hour to you guys.
Hour and a half.
Yeah. I am my father's son. With that being said, I just want to make a moment, and I know I do this often, but Chief, thank you for everything that your men and women do. It has been a crazy weekend. I know that I received so many calls and texts about what was happening at 7-Eleven on Saturday night, and or was that Friday night? I can't remember, but you know,
The pizza shop.
your men and women did a great job, and I appreciate having that information as we go. I don't know what happened last night, but there was about 2 o'clock a patrol car on my street that just came with just the lights and sat there for 10 minutes. I heard the helicopter up, so I know you guys have been busy. I didn't want to text you at 2 a.m. to find out what's going on, but I appreciate always having that information, and I think the commission does as well. So if there's ever anything big that happens in our city, if you can let us know. You know, obviously Mr. Forte does it. I called him at 9:30 or 10 o'clock on that evening to see what was going on. I didn't want to bother you in case you were boots on the ground. So, but thank you for keeping us safe, and please relay that message to your officers. So with that, I have nothing further. Is there anything further from any commissioner? All right, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.